Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about True Lies, Season 1, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, the team is basically having to deal with the operation they were dealing with at the beginning of the episode basically led to them finding out that there's a hacker at first they don't know who it is, but there's a hacker that's kind of got in control of what's it, like some missile silos or something like that, because there's two countries that are kind of warring with each other. One's saying the other's part of it, the other saying it's kind of almost similar to what was kind of happening last episode. Was it last episode or episode before last? Of like, hey, it's got to be someone that's associated with this. It's like, it's got to be someone associated with this. So they end up finding out there's like a new hacker on the scene called Havoc, and the team has to track him down. And at first they're like, oh, we're going to go here, we're going to get. It's like, nope, we are going to Florida. Which I love that Helen's the only one that says, she's like, oh, I've never been to Florida before. It's like, yeah, you're doing all this international travel. I mean, I think that's kind of, as someone who hasn't done very little travel in the bare minimum amount of travel in the U.S., I think, Helen likes the adventure aspect of, spyhood and stuff, but they ultimately end up finding out Havoc is just some kind of punk teenager. And it's like something I say time and time again, I think we can all generally agree on, is that, kids suck, especially teenagers. Teenagers are the worst, especially it's an age where you're figuring yourself out and you can be such a tool. I say that being able to look back in my life and go, I legitimately cringe at who I used to be. I was like, God, you were such a tool. Still am. Don't get twisted, but I'm not as much of a tool as I used to be. So, but the hacker behind all of this is some like random kid, and we find out his name is Max. And it parallels everything Harry and Helen are dealing with back home because of their daughter Dana. Like, she called them in the middle of an operation saying like, oh my God, it's a 911, it's emergency. And it's like, yeah, she needed her dad to buy her a ring light so she can like post a TikTok because she wants to do music now. And it's like, but wait, I thought you wanted to be a marine biologist. Oh my God, like when I was a kid, this was literally last year. And it's just, I guess it's also because Harry's kind of disconnected with Dana, and just because, and I think that's something maybe we dive into more and more. They already have issues with Jake. I think he's at that teenage age too, but he's not as much of an issue as like Dana is in particular. But it's like Harry is coming at it from like the aggro approach, because understandably teenagers can like piss you off and you're just like, you're so frustrated. So like, and you have Helen who's trying to take the like more, lighter approach, and she's just like, hey, like, how about we make it a reward system of like, you get points and that gives you screen time. And she's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then it's just kind of like, so Helen's approach didn't necessarily work out either, and both of them tried their respective approaches against like Havoc or Max, and Harry tries his approach, doesn't work. Helen tries her approach and he proceeds to talk smack about her shoes, and it's like, oh, this kid sucks. Later on, when they're taking him to like a hotel to kind of hide out, he tells his sob story about his mom, but it turns out the whole thing's a lie. And then he proceeds to call Harry and Helen horrible parents, because it's like, I can hear your husband on the phone lying to your kids right now. It's like, well, to be fair, we are spies. We can't really tell our kids the truth. But it's like, he has trust issues, because for him, it's like, I got to get back to my community. Like my squad, like they're my online family is all I have, because we find out later on his parents actually did die, and we can tell why he has some trust and resentment issues, especially with like government officials. When you're a part of a hacker group, you're all about kind of pushing back against the system anyway. You don't agree with the system, and so he also has a tainted view of them too, because it's like, what did the government do for me? Oh, my government like put me in foster care after my parents died, and it's like that was their solution. And so for him, it's like he's got a tainted view of them. I'm sure like this group he latched onto became the only family he really knew, and they mean a lot to him, because he's like, they're the only people I can trust and who've got my back. It is interesting, like, because later on it's like, oh, the group, like, I guess he didn't see how deep they were rolling with, and like, maybe I don't know if they had started shooting when they initially got Max and were trying to get him out of there. Also, that the way they were basically able to, what was it, the can opener, and I was like, oh, what is that? And it's like, yeah, they like basically cut open like part of like the trailer like Havoc was hiding in. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I mean, I thought that was pretty dope. Once again, the tools and everything as a spy are pretty dope, but regardless, like Max ran away from Helen, especially because Harry's like, oh, we could always just, shoot the kid. That's always an option. And Helen's just like, nah, screw it later on. Like, cause he like legitimately pissed her off. Like even her like, nurturing approach didn't work out. And I do love that it kind of becomes this greater conversation amongst the team, because then it's like, Maria and Luther are kind of like oh yeah, like, I'm the cool uncle. It's like, no, Jake and Dana think you're a dork. But she's like, me, and Jake loves me. It's like, Jake's 14-year-old boy and you're hot. Of course he loves you. It's like, so notice you also didn't really fully bring Dana into that conversation, because I guess like Maria, it's like, I don't know, maybe Dana's fine with me. Maybe they don't legitimately know where they stand in like Dana and Jake's eyes. But I also had this conversation later on, the two of them, about like imaginary kids. Like, oh, Luther's like, oh, I want to name a kid Sue, named after my favorite teacher. And Maria would want a daughter named Bridget. And it's like, oh, well, if, Bridget, we'd make sure she'd get only a limited amount of screen time when she's 15 or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to be the cool uncle that gives her stuff. And because Maria's like, yeah, because I don't want to do the whole co-parenting thing. He's like, no, I got it. Because kind of implying like, yeah, like you wouldn't be like the baby dad. You wouldn't be the father in this situation, But yeah, you want to play cool uncle, fine, you can do that. So, and Gibbs himself being like, yeah, I don't want any kids. So, I mean, obviously it's a evolving conversation for everybody, because you know where you are in your life. You're like, I kind of have no plans for kids, but it's something to kind of think about. I like the thought of having kids, but I don't know if I ever will, because I'm like, I don't think I'm responsible enough to raise a child, and I don't know. I have my own issues, and God knows I would never want to like any kid to have my issues, and I would never. And I think that I have a temper. I don't have the patience. So like there's a lot going on in that regard, So, and obviously like I said, there's a lot of parallels in the episode in that regard. I mean, Helen and Harry, it's like, hey, we're trying the best we can, but it's like, right, nothing we ever do is good enough. It is like the end of the world. Like there's always world-ending stakes. It's like, yeah, being a parent's pretty much like working for Omega Sector. It's like, right, do you do the more rough approach? Do you that doesn't work? Do the more soft hand approach? But that doesn't work. Like that middle ground. It's like, yeah, like how do you like balance that out? How do you help in that regard? What can you do? It's kind of for them. It's they're struggling to kind of figure that out this episode, especially with Max. But the moment it's like, oh, those guys knew exactly where Max was, and he was like, oh yeah, I was just talking with my buddies. Like, no, there's no way they could have gotten past like my systems and stuff like that to know where I am. I'm like, it's your people. At first I was like, oh, are the people after you the actual people you're talking online with? Because that's also the thing. Like people can hide behind screen names and stuff. So I'm like, do you not know? Because at first I'm like, could it be like, yeah, the people that are after you are just like using like fake names and trying to they are pretty tight with you, but they're not who you think they are. Turns out it's even worse than that. It's actually the people online are who he thinks they are. They are his collective, his family. They're a group called Pyramid, but the problem is they're the ones that hired the mercenaries that are after him, because they're trying, by whatever means, they're trying to get access to the missiles so they could sell them to the highest bidder. And for him, it's like, no, you're lying. But Gibbs like, no, I cloned their phones and stuff. I got the emails and everything. It's like the people you're so certain about being your family and stuff. You're telling Helen and Harry and the whole squad like, oh, how can I really trust you? And it's like, yeah, the people you trust most are the ones that are currently stabbing you in the back. Because for him, it's like, no, it's not like that. He kept trying to explain, like, why he did what he did. Because for him, it's like, we were trying to stop the fighting, but I guess, like, everyone else in the group had their minds of, like, well, we could get seriously paid for this. So he's more on the white hat type of thing. They're kind of on their black hat status. So I think, it's just like he wanted to try, like he legitimately was like, hey, we're stopping fighting, like we're holding these like missiles and stuff hostage until we can like stop the fighting. But the people in his group pyramid were just trying to take advantage of that. So, and they proceeded, the mercenary, to go as far as sending mercenaries after you to get this. And it's like, yeah, what would they have done if they had caught up? Because he didn't realize how dangerous the people after him were. He was just kind of like, probably thought like, oh, you guys are selling us. And it's like, no, gunfire and everything. And it's like, right, not trying to cause any international issues. So, shooting at like potential, people working for respective, governments and stuff like that. Like, and so Helen's fired, and it's like, well, she is trained and stuff like that. So I think this is our first time really getting to see Helen like really showcase her marksmanship. And it's like the point was also to miss. So she's doing that. Harry's back there tussling with the crew, and Helen ends up hitting like a propane tank or whatever, or gas tank or whatever, and causing an explosion. And Max is like, oh my god, this is sick. It's like, yeah, they're not the loser parents you thought they were. Then the team is running away from drones, exploding drones in particular. Luckily, Gib and Havoc worked together, and they were able to hack the drones and take down the people after them. So, and it's like, yeah, Havoc knows who Gib is because he's the Gibinator. It's like, oh, so original. It's like, yeah, but that's kind of like his online presence. And he references this particular game. He's like, yeah, I'm in the top 3. He's like, wait, you're the Gibinator? He's like, Havoc and Gibinator, we just did that. And it's like, that's actually pretty dope. And I do love that Gib kind of took on a mentorship role when it came to it. It's like, yeah, the kid's not too bad. Plus, he's really good at as in like, oh, he's not too bad now that you've kind of gotten to know him a little bit better. But also, the kid's really good at what he does. He's like, not many people know his lane of things. So, at the end of the day, got him a job at Omega Center. Now, does that mean we'll be seeing a lot more of Max going forward? Probably not, but just knowing like, hey, they could always bring that character back in some capacity at the office, essentially, so that'd be interesting. Kind of got another hacker on the team. And I do love that Gib is the one that's like, I don't want kids, and ultimately he's the one that ends up kind of connecting with Max in the end, and once again, even giving him a job, kind of taking those skills and put them to even better use, so... I even thought it was kind of sad, but also kind of cute, the Luther and Maria situation where it's like, oh yeah, like, talking about Bridget and stuff, and, it's like, yeah, she's like, I think I can't do this whole co-parenting thing, and Luther's like, yeah, me too, if Sam, like, find a mom that's beautiful, awesome, that's smart, that's pretty good at everything. And then you could be the cool aunt, and just kind of walks away, and Maria's like, yeah. It's like Luther, man, it sucks because it's like every time it's like, well, because it's hard to say what he wants. It's unclear whether it's like, oh, he's kind of putting himself out there on a ledge, but anytime Maria kind of pulls back, later on he pulls back even further. Because it's like, well, once again, like, was it episode 3? He ended up passing out when she ended up kind of like talking about why they broke up. And once again, I don't know if he heard that side of things, and Gib might not even heard it either, because she at least made sure the comms were probably off when she said that, because she's not an idiot like Luther who kept leaving them on, saying all this embarrassing stuff and Gib having to hear it. But other than that, now it's this, and she was kind of like having an olive branch, kind of almost, because I guess he was almost kind of leading her on by making her think like he was referencing her as kind of like the mom in his imaginary, child situation. So it's just kind of like, oh, it's one step forward, one step back. It's like, come on. I think they'll ultimately get together, but it's still just kind of a thing of like, oh, come on. I was like, that sucks, dude. Like, and then Harry and Helen decide how they're going to handle the Dana situation. It's like, right, we kind of didn't handle things the best way, but hey, we are going to be here to support you. And it's like, oh, you're going to get me this and that, a better phone for a camera for my TED Talks and a better microphone. And it's like, oh, we can turn my room into a... It's like, oh, no, we're not going to pay for any of that. We're going to support you by helping you get a job at, what was it, like Baskin Robbins or something like that. And it's like, hey, that way you can pay for it all yourself. And she's almost like, are you serious? It's like, yeah, no, 2 scoops. It's like, terrible parents. Yeah, we got this on lock. It's like, no. We're going to support your dreams. Like, you want to be a singer? We'll support you, Dad. We've got your back on that. But we don't want to be dream crushers because we're not. So we will support your dreams. Granted, we won't be paying for it. It's like, you have to take responsibilities for your dreams, and anything you're aiming for with your dreams, you can pay for it out of your own pocket. So we'll see how long the singer route goes. I mean, I'm not saying like she can't, but it's like, right, you want all this expensive stuff, make do with what you have. So we'll see how that dynamic plays out going forward, especially once again, kind of the dirt your family's got on you because of the, once again, we still are unclear whether or not they ever looked at that flash drive that their neighbor gave them. So we still are unclear about that. But either way, a lot of interesting things. I'm curious to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good